Recent international reports indicate that rising geopolitical tensions in the Middle East are drawing significant global attention. According to reports circulating in international media outlets such as ABC News, Iran has warned that it could potentially block the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical maritime routes in the world. Nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through this strategic waterway, meaning that any disruption could have immediate and far-reaching consequences for global energy markets and the international economy. Analysts say the warning has already raised concerns among governments, energy companies, and financial markets. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf with international shipping routes, making it one of the most sensitive choke points in global oil trade. If access to the strait were restricted, even temporarily, the effects could be felt almost immediately in global fuel prices, transportation costs, and industrial production. International authorities are closely monitoring the situation as diplomatic discussions intensify in an effort to prevent the growing tension from turning into a global energy crisis. Iranian officials have indicated that continued military and economic pressure on the country could lead to serious consequences, including the potential closure of the strategic passage. Such a move would directly affect global energy supply chains and could trigger sharp increases in oil and fuel prices worldwide. At the same time, international naval forces are increasing their monitoring of the Persian Gulf as concerns grow over the possibility of a military confrontation in the region. Security analysts warn that if the Strait of Hormuz were closed, even for a short period of time, the economic impact could spread rapidly across global energy markets, international shipping networks, and commodity prices. Energy experts emphasize that the Strait of Hormuz is not only crucial for oil transport, but also for the stability of the global economy. Every day, millions of barrels of oil and natural gas move through the narrow waterway toward markets in Asia, Europe, and North America. Countries that depend heavily on Gulf oil supplies, including China, India, Japan, and several European nations, would likely feel the effects of any disruption first. Governments around the world are now evaluating diplomatic and strategic responses to prevent the crisis from escalating further. Some international powers have reportedly begun quiet diplomatic discussions aimed at reducing tensions between the parties involved. However, analysts caution that the geopolitical balance in the region remains extremely fragile, and even a minor incident could trigger a rapid escalation involving multiple countries. Another major concern is the potential impact on global financial markets. Historically, periods of geopolitical uncertainty often cause fluctuations in stock markets, currency values, and commodity prices. In this case, the possibility of a disruption along one of the world's most vital energy routes has already created anxiety among economists and global business leaders. Reports from ABC News also suggest that the presence of additional naval forces and defense systems in the Persian Gulf has increased significantly as tensions rise. Security officials warned that even a small incident, such as a drone strike, a naval confrontation, or a misinterpreted military movement, could quickly escalate into a broader conflict. Energy analysts further warned that if oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz were interrupted, even temporarily, global oil prices could surge rapidly. This would directly affect transportation costs, industrial production, and the price of essential goods in many countries. The region is already considered one of the most heavily militarized areas in the world, which increases the risk that any miscalculation could trigger a wider confrontation. For now, the international community continues to monitor developments closely, while diplomatic channels remain active in an attempt to avoid a major escalation. Global leaders and international organizations are calling for restraint and dialogue, warning that a conflict in such a strategic region could have serious consequences, not only for the Middle East, but also for the global economy and energy security. Experts also note that the threat to close the Strait of Hormuz may be part of a broader political strategy intended to increase pressure on rival nations and global powers that rely heavily on Gulf energy supplies. By raising the possibility of disrupting a route through which a significant portion of the world's oil flows, Iran sends a signal that any escalation in the region could have worldwide economic consequences. Shipping companies and international insurers are already assessing the risks of operating in the Persian Gulf, which could lead to increased shipping costs and disruptions in global trade. Even the perception of danger can lead to shifts in trade routes, delivery delays, and increased pressure on oil and gas prices. As the situation continues to evolve, governments, financial institutions, and energy companies remain alert to every development. Decisions made in this strategically important region could influence global energy stability, economic markets, and international political dynamics in the days and weeks ahead. As international attention continues to focus on developments in the Persian Gulf, experts say the situation surrounding the Strait of Hormuz represents one of the most delicate geopolitical moments in recent years. The narrow waterway has long been recognized as a strategic artery for the global energy supply, and any threat to its stability quickly sends ripples across governments, markets, and international institutions. According to further reporting cited by ABC News, global energy markets have already begun responding to the rising tension with increased volatility. Traders, investors, and energy analysts are closely monitoring every development in the region, aware that even the perception of instability can influence oil prices and investor behavior. In previous geopolitical crises, similar warnings about disruptions to key shipping routes have triggered sharp increases in crude oil prices within hours. The Strait of Hormuz itself is only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, making it a highly sensitive passage for international shipping. Despite its narrow geography, it handles an enormous amount of maritime traffic every day. Tankers carrying oil and liquefied natural gas travel through the strait toward major global markets, particularly in Asia. For countries that rely heavily on imported energy resources, the security of this waterway is considered a matter of national economic stability. Energy economists note that the significance of the strait goes far beyond simple oil transportation. The uninterrupted flow of energy supplies affects everything from global manufacturing and transportation systems to food production and consumer prices. If oil prices surge due to supply disruptions, the effects often cascade through the global economy. Shipping costs increase, airlines face higher fuel expenses, and industries that depend on petroleum-based products see production costs rise. Because of these interconnected systems, analysts say the Strait of Hormuz functions as a pressure point in the global economy. Any disruption, whether caused by political decisions, military confrontation, or accidents at sea, can quickly spread uncertainty throughout global financial markets. In recent days, reports referenced by ABC News indicate that diplomatic activity has intensified behind the scenes. Officials from several countries are reportedly working through diplomatic channels to prevent the situation from escalating further. These discussions involve both direct communication between governments and coordination through international organizations concerned with maritime security and energy stability. Diplomats familiar with the situation say the goal of these discussions is to maintain open communication lines while encouraging restraint among the parties involved. History has shown that miscalculations in heavily militarized regions can lead to unintended confrontations, particularly when naval forces from multiple nations operate within the same strategic space. Military analysts also note that the Persian Gulf is already one of the most closely monitored waterways in the world. Surveillance systems, satellite monitoring, and naval patrols are constantly observing shipping movements and potential security risks. These monitoring systems are designed to detect threats early and prevent incidents that could disrupt international commerce. However, despite these safeguards, the presence of numerous military vessels and defense systems in a relatively confined area increases the risk of accidental encounters. Naval forces from several countries regularly conduct patrol operations in the region to ensure the security of commercial shipping routes. When tensions rise, these operations often become more frequent and more visible. According to defense experts interviewed in reports referenced by ABC News, one of the main concerns is the possibility of unintended escalation. Even a minor event, such as the interception of a vessel, a disputed navigation route, or a drone incident, could quickly lead to a broader confrontation if not managed carefully. For this reason, international security officials are emphasizing the importance of communication between naval forces operating in the region. De-escalation protocols and maritime communication systems are often used to prevent misunderstandings during encounters at sea. Another key factor in the current situation is the role of global energy demand. Over the past several decades, the global economy has become deeply dependent on reliable energy supplies. While renewable energy sources are gradually expanding, oil and natural gas still account for a significant portion of global energy consumption. Countries across Asia, Europe, and North America rely on shipments passing through the Strait of Hormuz to meet their energy needs. For some economies, particularly rapidly growing industrial nations, stable access to oil and gas imports is essential for maintaining economic growth and industrial production. Energy analysts warn that if supply routes were disrupted, governments might be forced to release oil from strategic reserves in order to stabilize markets. Many countries maintain emergency stockpiles of crude oil specifically for situations where global supply chains are threatened. These reserves are designed to provide temporary relief during crises, but they are not intended as long-term replacements for stable international trade routes. If disruptions were prolonged, the effects could eventually spread across industries ranging from transportation to agriculture. Shipping companies are also watching developments carefully. The global maritime industry depends on predictable and secure shipping routes. When geopolitical tensions rise in strategic waterways, shipping companies often review their operational strategies, insurance coverage, and risk assessments. Some shipping operators may consider rerouting vessels or adjusting travel schedules to reduce exposure to potential risks. However, avoiding the Strait of Hormuz entirely is not always practical due to the geographic limitations of alternative routes. Insurance companies that provide coverage for maritime shipping are also closely monitoring the situation. When risks increase in certain regions, insurance premiums for vessels traveling through those areas can rise significantly. Higher insurance costs can eventually translate into higher transportation costs, which then affect global trade. Another concern raised by analysts involves the psychological impact of geopolitical crises on financial markets. Even before any physical disruption occurs, the mere possibility of a supply interruption can cause investors to react cautiously. Stock markets may fluctuate, currency values can shift, and commodity prices often become more volatile. Economists say this reaction is partly driven by uncertainty. When investors cannot predict how a geopolitical situation might evolve, they often move capital into safer assets until the situation becomes clearer. This pattern has been observed during previous international crises involving energy supply routes. Markets often react quickly to early warning signs, and stability typically returns only after tensions begin to ease. Beyond economic considerations, geopolitical analysts are also examining the broader strategic implications of the situation. The Persian Gulf region has long been a focal point of international diplomacy due to its vast energy resources and strategic location. Regional dynamics are shaped by a complex network of alliances, rivalries, and historical disputes. When tensions rise in this region, multiple countries often become involved in diplomatic efforts aimed at maintaining stability. Some analysts believe that the current situation reflects broader geopolitical shifts occurring across the international system. As global power balances evolve and new economic partnerships emerge, strategic regions such as the Persian Gulf continue to play a critical role in international politics. Reports referenced by ABC News indicate that international organizations and diplomatic institutions are actively encouraging dialogue between all parties involved. The goal is to prevent the situation from escalating into a larger confrontation that could disrupt global commerce and energy markets. At the same time, policy experts emphasize that diplomatic solutions often require patience and careful negotiation. Complex geopolitical disputes rarely resolve quickly, particularly when multiple national interests are involved. Observers note that global leaders are likely weighing a range of possible outcomes as they assess how best to respond to the situation. Some governments may focus on diplomatic engagement, while others may prioritize security measures aimed at protecting shipping routes and commercial infrastructure. Meanwhile, energy analysts continue to track developments in oil production and global supply levels. Oil-producing countries outside the Persian Gulf may play an important role in stabilizing markets if disruptions occur. Increased production from other regions could help offset supply shortages, although such adjustments typically take time. Another factor influencing the situation is the evolving nature of global energy infrastructure. Over the past decade, many countries have invested heavily in energy diversification, including renewable sources and alternative supply routes. These investments are intended to reduce dependence on single geographic choke points. Despite these efforts, however, the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the most critical nodes in the global energy network. Its strategic importance means that any tension affecting the strait will likely continue to draw intense international attention. Security analysts say that maintaining stability in such regions requires cooperation among multiple stakeholders. Governments, international organizations, energy companies, and shipping operators all share an interest in ensuring that global trade routes remain open and secure. For now, the situation remains fluid. Diplomatic discussions are ongoing, military forces continue monitoring maritime activity, and global markets remain sensitive to new developments. Around the world, policymakers and economic planners are carefully watching the evolving situation. The decisions made by leaders in the coming days could influence not only regional stability, but also the broader trajectory of global energy markets. As analysts continue evaluating the possible scenarios, one thing remains clear. The Strait of Hormuz represents far more than a narrow waterway between two coastlines. It is a central link in the chain that connects energy production, international trade, economic stability, and geopolitical strategy. For millions of people around the world, the outcome of the current tensions could have real and tangible consequences. From fuel prices at the pump to the cost of transporting goods across continents, developments in this strategic region have the potential to shape everyday economic realities. Because of this global impact, the international community continues to watch the Persian Gulf with close attention. Diplomatic efforts, security monitoring, and economic planning are all unfolding simultaneously as leaders attempt to manage a situation that could influence the stability of the global energy system. The coming days and weeks may prove decisive in determining whether tensions gradually ease through diplomatic engagement or evolve into a more prolonged period of geopolitical uncertainty.